The 9,442nd meeting of the Security Council called to order. The provisional agenda for this meeting is the situation in the Middle East, including the Palestinian question. The agenda is adopted. The Security Council will now begin its consideration of item 2 of the agenda. Members of the Council have before them document S/2023/773, the text of a draft resolution submitted by Brazil. The Council is ready to proceed to the vote on the draft resolution before it. The representative of the Russian Federation has submitted amendments to the text of the draft resolution. I give the floor to the representative of the Russian Federation.
Mr. President, during consultations on the 17th of October, many members of the Council sought to dissuade us to vote on our humanitarian depoliticized draft resolution. We were asked to wait 24 hours in order to reach a consensus draft resolution. We did not agree with that, and we were right, because ultimately, after almost 2 days, the vote is on a resolution that is slightly changed but was not discussed by the members of the Council. We regret that the Council wasted a very precious 36 hours, during which time the number of casualties increased. The strike on the hospital in Gaza yesterday killed hundreds of people. Given this, the inaction from the Security Council looks appalling. Yesterday, we did warn colleagues that we just can't waste any time now. Distinguished colleagues, I will be frankly, the time for diplomatic metaphors is long gone. Everybody who did not support our humanitarian resolution with a call for a swift ceasefire must understand that they bear some of the responsibility for what happened. The Brazil draft resolution, unfortunately, will not help to avoid such tragedies from occurring. There is no clear call in it for a ceasefire. This is a very important thing to de-escalate the situation on the ground. It's very important wording. That has been replaced with humanitarian causes and giving unhindered access to UN workers. But that's not the same thing. Humanitarian causes will not help to stop the bloodshed. It is only a ceasefire that will help to do this. Furthermore, the draft still has a number of political elements in it that push us to one side and do not talk about the absolute unacceptability of the attacks on civilians in the Gaza Strip, and also as on civilian objects. The importance of this is absolutely crystal clear for everyone right now, and so we have proposed 2 amendments to address these issues. The first is a unambiguous call for a stop on indiscriminate attack against civilians in the Gaza Strip and on civilian objects, including the attack on the Al Ali hospital, that airstrike, and also the strong condemnation of the imposition of the blockade. The second adds to the OP a new point on the call for an immediate, durable, and fully respect humanitarian ceasefire. If these are not included in the text of the document, it will not help to address the tragic, devastating humanitarian situation in Gaza. Rather, it will just worsen the divide in between members of the committee and will polarize the positions of members of the international community. We would urge members of the Council to vote in support of the amendment proposed by Russia. Thank you.
I thank the representative of the Russian Federation for their statement. Would any other member wish to take the floor? None. Members of the Council have before them proposed amendments submitted by the Russian Federation to the text of the draft resolution contained in document S/2023/773 submitted by Brazil. Rule 36 of the Council's Provisional Rules of Procedure state the following. If 2 or more amendments to a motion or draft resolution are proposed, the President shall rule on the order in which they are to be voted upon. Ordinarily, the Security Council shall first vote on the amendment furthest removed in substance from the original proposal, and then on the amendment next furthest removed until all amendments have been put to the vote. But when an amendment adds to or delete from the text of a motion or draft resolution, that amendment shall be voted on first. Accordingly, I intend to put the proposed amendment to the vote first. I shall now put to the vote the proposed amendment to be inserted after operative paragraph 2 of the draft resolution. This amendment is contained in document S/2023/775. Will those in favor of the proposed amendment to be inserted after operative paragraph 2 contained in document S/2023/775 please raise their hand. Against? Attention. The result of the voting is as follows. 6 votes in favor, 1 vote against, 8 attention. The proposed amendment has not been adopted, having failed to obtain the required number of votes. I shall now put to the vote the proposed amendment to be inserted before operative paragraph 1 of the draft resolution. This amendment is contained in document S/2023/775. 3/776. Will those in favor of the proposed amendment to be inserted before operative paragraph 1 contained in document S/2023/77776 please raise their hand. Against? Abstention? The result of the voting is as follows. 7 votes in favor, 1 vote against, 7 abstentions. The proposed amendment has not been adopted, having failed to obtain the required number of votes. The representative of the Russian Federation has asked for the floor.
Distinguished Mr. President, the vote on the immediate ceasefire and on an unequivocal condemnation of the indiscriminate attack did not get past. Those delegations who either abstained or voted against essentially were against the cessation of a bloodshed in the Middle East. There could be no other explanations of it. Of course, the colleagues here saying, well, their justification was it was not balanced. But all of these complaints are just going to be empty. You've made your choice, however, and you are going to have to bear responsibility for it to the countries, people of your countries, and to the people in the region, and the people who are living under this terrible, deadly threat. Thank you.
Statement. It is my understanding that the Council is ready to proceed with the vote on the draft resolution contained in document S/2023/773 submitted by Brazil. I shall put the draft resolution to the vote now. Will those in favor of the draft resolution contained in document S/2023/773 please raise their hand. Will those against? Abstention? The result of the voting is as follows. 12 vote in favor, 1 vote against, 2 abstentions. The draft resolution has not been adopted owing to the negative vote of a permanent member of the Council. The draft resolution, no. I now give the floor to those members of the Council who wish to make statement after the vote. I shall now make a statement in my capacity as a representative. Dear colleague, at last Friday's closed consultations, Council members asked for Brazil's leadership in our capacity as presidents in October to facilitate the Council response to the escalating crisis in Israel and Palestine, in particular its humanitarian aspect. We heeded the call with a sense of urgency and responsibility. In our view, the Council had to take action and to do so very quick. Council paralysis in the face of a humanitarian catastrophe is not in the interest of the international community. Therefore, throughout last weekend and the following days, we worked very hard to extensive and collaborative engagement with Council members to help build a unified position. While making a good faith effort to accommodate different, sometimes opposing positions, our focus was and remains on the critical humanitarian situation on the ground. Political realism guided us, but our sight was always set on the humanitarian imperative. Exactly as in other very sensitive files on the Council's agenda, in which Brazil had a special role to play, international humanitarian law and human rights law provided a clear framework for action. Our proposed act unequivocally condemns all forms of violence against civilians, including the heinous acts of terrorism by Hamas and the taking of hostages. It called for their immediate and unconditional release. It also called on all parties to strictly abide by their international legal obligations, in particular those relating to the protection of civilian infrastructure, and humanitarian personnel. The draft resolution also stressed the urgent need for humanitarian access to civilians. The text incorporated urgent and multiple calls by the UN and many other actors for humanitarian pauses to allow for the delivery of aid and the voluntary safe passage of civilians. It encouraged the establishment of humanitarian corridors and other mechanisms to facilitate the smooth delivery of aid. The draft further reflected the ethical necessity to provide civilians in Gaza with electricity, water, fuel, food, and medical supply. The necessity to be protected from forced relocation when the prevailing conditions on the ground do not ensure a safe and secure displacement. Thus, faced with heinous terrorist acts against Israeli civilians, with the forceful reaction to such acts and an ever-growing humanitarian disaster imposed on Gaza, the Council response we proposed was robust and balanced. We are grateful to all Council members who engaged with us since last Friday and demonstrated a sincere and practical commitment to multilateralism. Sadly, very sadly, the Council was yet again unable to adopt a resolution on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Again, silence and inaction prevail, to no one's true long-term interest. While we deeply regret that collective action is made impossible in this new Council, we do hope that effort by other actors will yield positive results. They must be prompt, effective, and substantial. Hundreds of thousands of civilians in Gaza cannot wait any longer. Actually, they have waited for far too long to no avail. I resume my function as President of the Council, and I'll give the floor to the Russian Federation.
Mr. President, dear, we have just been witnesses once again of popular adopted by our colleague not standing in principle in the Security Council. They really did not want to have any solution made found here. So So because of this, they had to just be very obvious as to what their intentions were before us here all today. Now, I'm not going to waste your time on going on about this. I think it's crystal clear what's happened, but I would just like to talk about what the head of Lockheed Martin, James Hedges, said yesterday, talking to the American media. He said there's no point in restraining Israel from any military actions. What is the point in the future development of our military-industrial complex, which will increase by at least 2% of GDP? There are conflicts which need to be resolved with arms, and we are prepared to provide these weapons, end quote. As we say, no comment. Really, that is the very essence of the US's policy in the region and the Pacific region. We do hope that thanks to that, our international partners, after today's votes, will have no illusions about that and what they're intending whatsoever. Thank you.
Thank the representative of the Russian Federation, and I give the floor to the representative of the United States.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, as we meet, President Biden is in the region. His trip is a clear demonstration of the fact that the United States is actively engaging at the high level to secure the release of to prevent the conflict from breaking, to stress the need to protect billion lives, to address humanitarian crisis facing us, and to demonstrate to the Israeli people that the United States stand with them in their time of sorrow. And we are on the ground doing the hard work of the world. And while we recognize Brazil's desire to move this tech forward, we believe we need to let that responsibly, especially Secretary General Guterres, President Biden, Secretary Blinken, and regional actors are engaged in intensive dialogue on the very issue we are deliberating on today. Yes, resolutions are, and yes, this council must speak out, but the actions we take must be informed by the facts on the ground and support direct diplomacy that can save lives. The council needs to get this right. Colleagues, the United States is disappointed this resolution made no mention of Israel's rights of self. Like every nation in the world, Israel has the inherent right of self-defense as reflected in Article 51 of the UN Charter. Following previous terrorist attacks by groups such as Al-Qaeda and ISIS, this council reaffirmed that right. This text should have done the same. Though we could not support this resolution going forward, we will continue to work closely with all council members on this press, just as we will continue to reiterate the need to protect civilians, including members of the media, humanitarian workers, and UN officials. And when I talk about the protection of civilians, I mean all civilians. The United States horrified and saddened by yesterday's explosion at the Ali Arab Hospital in Gaza. We mourn this tragic loss. On the humanitarian front, we are working with Israel, its neighbor, the United Nations, and other parties to address the humanitarian crisis in Gaza. It is critical that food, medicine, water, and fuel begin flowing into Gaza as soon as possible. Families, the elderly, and children are in dire. Let's be Hamas's own actions have brought this severe humanitarian crisis in Gaza. And Hamas has caused so much needless suffering, death, and every member state should condemn Hamas's terrorism and cruelty. And every member state should call on Hamas to cease its endless barrage of rocket against Israel. It's not complicated. It's not controversial. This is the bare minimum. Colleagues, at this difficult moment, let us all call for the technobillions and unequivocally condemn Hamas. Let us all affirm Israel's right of self-defense and support the urgent diplomatic efforts underway. Let us stand with the UN and other partners as they work to alleviate the humanitarian crisis facing Palestinians, and let us all support equal justice for every help.
I thank the representative of the United States, and I give floor to the representative of Malta.
Thank you, President. Malta voted in favor of the draft resolution tabled by Brazil. Malta has also abstained on the two amendments proposed by the Russian Federation. Although we have no issue with this, we saw no reason to alter where the granted resolution rests on a delicate balance, and that's all Council unity.